Hello, boys and girls, germs, germettes, all those in between, everything that you could possibly be, whatever it is you like. Welcome back to the Syntax Sorcerer, where I take you on a magical journey through coding. And as we've been doing for the past 19 lessons now, this being lesson 20, we are doing C Sharp, and specifically Introduction to C Sharp for beginners. Now, I don't cover things like classes do, like going into depth about bits and bytes and all that kind of stuff. I kind of just jump right into the raw meat and potatoes and show you how to cook. I say, cut the onions this way, and then put it in the pot. So, if you guys do want a more detailed breakdown of stuff like that, like going over the small syntax, going over how things work, like megabits, megabytes, bits, bytes, you know, we want to do the history of the internet for all I care. All that stuff's fine and dandy. I just want to bring you guys quality content on just straight up programming. So if you guys want to do more of that stuff, that's cool. We can. Just leave a comment. So, what is today's lesson? Today, just like we did on the iterating through a dictionary, we did Introduction to Collections, which is dictionaries and lists for us. Now we're doing an iteration through a list. So, we will go over everything, all the syntax in here and everything. Let's just jump in like we usually do, start writing some code, and then we'll explain everything, right? Okay, perfect. I'm so glad you guys agree with me there. So, lists are... well, I guess this is just easier to do. So let's define a list, right? Let's call, initialize, all that stuff, right? So we're going to define the list. The list is going to be list, and we'll call it int, just like that. Or sorry, we'll use ints only. We're going to call it numbers, right? We're just going to do something very simple, similar to what we did in lesson 18. New list int. But we're not doing all this. So what we're going to do is list int. We're going to add numbers in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Perfect. Just like that. All the way up to 9. You can do it as far as you want. You can add spaces in. Doesn't matter. Not going to change anything right there. We're just going to do that, right? So we're declaring a new list. We're saying that we need a new list of integers. Here's the integers. The new list is going to be called numbers. And with that, we're going to iterate through. Iterate through our new list. And we're going to do for each. Again, we've done this before. And we're going to do, I'm going to say int num in numbers, because it's got to be different. This is for the for each. For what we're about to write, this is to connect it right there, right? So it can't just be numbers in numbers. That would cause a whole lot of errors. And so then right here, you can see it's written it out for us. Console.WriteLine num, and you can see num's got the gray line right there. That means it just like, it's like there's an unnecessary assignment. There's no value given to num. We haven't done anything with it. So once we do that, you see that gray line disappears. Bam. Don't worry about it up there. The gray line's not important there. So we have now iterated, and we're doing a for each. So for each num, which is going to be numbers, in the list numbers, console is going to write line of the number, and it's going to do each line, each item in that list. Right, so we're just gonna we're gonna go do our step through code, and we're gonna do explanations on the dynamic size and everything. But right now, we're just gonna hit Control S, run the program. All right, so you see it went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Each time it wrote a new line for each number that we stored in the list. Now you're probably sitting there like, "Hey, Mr. Syntax Sorcerer, can I store other things in the list? And what about, like, what can I do with, do I just have to be numbers?" Guys, it's crazy. I'm going to tell you all of that. First, let's step through the code though, right? Let's just do our normal step through. So let's get ready to do a long list of comments like I always do. All right, so in this example, we're using list integer to store a collection of integers, which would be, this would be our collection. The for each loop is then going to iterate over each element in the list, assigning each element to a variable num, right? And then normally you use like this system.collections.generic, which would then tell the program to use the generic namespace, but we don't need to do that anymore. It's been programmed into C#. So instead, we know that we're using the list class. It knows what the list class is. So sometimes you have to use reference other libraries. You'd be like using namespace std, right? And that's actually a C++ one, but that was just the first thing that popped into my head. We're not using that. So that just gives you like more libraries. Like when we do math stuff in the future, we're going to have to call some math libraries. I think we did that before in one of our other like when we made like a calculator for finance, for the finance bros, 554, no, 64, something like that. If you're on TikTok, you know, finance bros. It's a joke. Anyways, moving on. So the list int numbers equals new list int 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This line declares the new variable called numbers, right? Which is a list of integers, because we said it's a list of integers, and creates a new new list object using the new keyword, and then initializes it with these 9 integers. So it's initialized with them. Sorry about that. I got distracted. All right, so I don't remember where we were in my explanations. We're just going to go over it again. We were talking about the for each. Is that where we were? No, we're just going to go back to the list. So this line declares a new variable, call it numbers, which is a list of integers, and then initializes it. Yep, we did do this. We initialized with 5 integers. I apologize. All right, the for each int num in numbers. This line starts the for each loop, which iterates over each element. So 1, 2, 3, each element is anything separated by a comma, right? Declares them a new variable called num with the type of int to store the current element being iterated over. And then it's just going to console write line and print it out. Each time it iterates, it prints one of the numbers from the number list. And you're going to be like, well, why can't I just for each every time instead of like for loops and do whiles and stuff? Because if a for each understands to go iterate through each list, well, for each is not exclusive to just lists and dictionaries and arrays, but it's exclusive in how it functions, and we'll go over that a different time. Maybe I'll do a video just on for each itself. But just understand that C# is smarter than human brain, big dum-dum, right? Good stuff. Because, I mean, I'm not that smart. I just know stuff memorized, right? And sometimes I still have to look stuff up. I'm gonna give you guys a little secret about the development, programming, coding world, whatever you want to call it. We all Google things. Yeah, that's actually true. It's a running joke that we will go to like GitHub or something like that and grab somebody else's code, copy paste it, and then just kind of change the variables around to fit what our current needs are. Now, what I'm teaching you is very basic, so there's no need to do that. But when it comes to advanced algorithms and advanced programs and like something that requires hundreds, if not thousands of lines of codes and hundreds of different methods, you'll understand eventually. And maybe we can go over some of that stuff. So let's talk about lists, right? What are lists? It's a data structure. Remember how we talked about dictionaries being data structures? Some of you are going to be like, what's a data structure? That's a great question. Data structures are structures of data. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry about that. Basically, all that you need to know is a data structure that allows you to store and kind of manage like collections of items in order, right? So in a ordered sequence, I should say. Ordered sequence more than anything, right? Lists are versatile. They're very commonly used when you need to work with like dynamic sets of elements. So what I mean when I say dynamic means they can grow or shrink. And no size needs to be given or defined, right? And you're going to understand why I say that, because when we get to arrays, we're going to first start with a defined array, and then we'll talk about dynamic arrays later. So with that, lists are versatile because they can grow or shrink during the program's execution. And some of you might be like, why don't we just use arrays then? Or why don't we only use lists or only use dictionaries? There's all a specific purpose, guys. I'm telling you. I can already see your hands raising like a brand new freshman. There's a reason for everything. Some things work in certain situations where other things don't. Think about it. Think about it like that. All right. So let's give a basic overview of how like lists work in C#. So we talked about like ordered sequence. So ordered collections, so a collection that has an ordered sequence, right? Lists basically, lists maintain, sorry, I had to make sure I was still, didn't get the black screen like I did you guys in the other video, the order of elements as they are added. Meaning elements, actually let's just do a new line, sorry. Meaning elements are stored in a sequence. Oh my god. Sequence. They were stored in the sequence. The sequence. Gosh, I am having a hard time, guys. In the sequence. They were inserted into the list. So, in the order sequence in which they were inserted into the list. Right? Do we understand that? In that order. Dynamic size. All right. We said it once. We say it again. We're going to repeat it because repeating things gets it into our head. Dynamic lists adjust their size as elements are added or removed. You don't need to specify the size up front. No need to specify size. You can remove elements freely, add elements freely without resizing the list manually. This gets into like with if I remember correctly, I don't remember if C# does the same thing as C++, but they're very similar languages. So like one thing you have to do in C++ is you have constructors and destructors. Constructors will do something, right? And then after you're done using that thing that constructor used, you then use a destructor to clear the memory out so that you're not just hogging up all the volatile memory. That might be a little bit over the top, but sometimes you need to have dynamic size. Sometimes you need to have a static size. These will all like make sense as we get like deeper and deeper and deeper till we're freaking shoulder deep inside of inside of C#. So declaration and initialization. We're just going to say initialize. C# lists are represented by list, and then we're just going to use T in this case. Nope. List T class, right? T represents the type of element stored, right? So if we're storing integers, T is going to equal int. If we're storing strings, T is going to equal string. If we're storing an object, T is going to equal that object. You can declare and initialize the list using the new keyword like we've done right here, right? Okay, perfect. Adding and removing. Some of you who have paid attention to the last 2 lessons are going to remember that there's a .add and .remove, right? Well, lists have a little bit more. You have an add method. You have an insert method. Or you can do... No, that's it for the add and insert. There's a other way to insert, like an initializer syntax, and it's kind of what we initialized the list with initialize data. We gave it data to begin. Initializes to begin it, like to start it. So the add and insert method, those aren't important at the very moment. Just know that they both put data inside of the list, right? Then we have the remove. You have remove at, and you have clear. So these are all, again, going to do certain things. You can imagine what remove and remove at how they could be different. Clear is going to clear all elements. Just remember that from our dictionaries video where we talked over clear. It's the same exact thing, very similar uses for lists and dictionaries. So moving on, accessing elements, right? So how to get into the ones and nines. So what we're going to do there is you can access them by their index, right? Which is similar to elements in array. It allows you to retrieve or modify elements based on their position in the list. Equals position in the list. This is why I personally like dictionaries for storing data, because I can just type in like, oh, I need to know John Doe's name, and it's gonna do. That was a bad example. Don't copy me. But yeah, position in the list is the index. All right, iteration. So we already used one method of iteration, which was the for each loop. You can use do whiles. You can use all sorts of lists, fors and whiles. One thing we did talk about in the dictionaries was link queries. These work in lists as well. You're actually going to be able to use link a lot, and we're going to get into that later. But you can also use traditional loop structures like for, while. Those work. Or for each. That's not really a traditional because it's a kind of its own method. But it still works. So, why would we use these? Well, lists are used for various purposes. They store sequence of numbers and manage collection of objects. You can use them to implement algorithms that require dynamic data structures. So, really, why we use them is flexibility, efficiency, and ease of use. Honestly, easy. It makes them an essential tool in a lot of programming scenarios. So, in reality, again, you can use them all different sorts of ways. And with that, I think we've kind of really covered iterating through a list and how we can use lists. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know these videos are running a little bit longer than what I've been trying to do. I'm going to get back to shortening them down. I think just once we get past arrays, we can shorten back down to about 10 to 12 minutes. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, and have a wonderful day.